I'll start introducing myself. I'm Luisa. I'm content manager at Algrano. Been here for 2.5 years, more or less. I've been working in coffee for over 6 years, and I am very happy to welcome Kimberly, Sungi, Vava, and Giselle for this webinar. I think we have like a very heavyweight group of speakers here today. If you guys want to introduce yourself in the chat as well and just say where you're dialing in from, feel welcome. Just a bit of like our tentative agenda for today. The main thing that we want to discuss is the initiatives that are currently being led by women to reshape the coffee supply chain. We don't want to just focus on the like the negative data points that we see so often about women in the industry. We already know, and we've seen them many times. So we want more to celebrate the good work being done by women in the supply chain. And if time allows, and if the conversation allows, we're going to talk also about like more soft skills or skills that women bring to the table and how their perspectives can improve how the supply chain is operates. And we'll also talk about the examples of inspiring men in the industry, men that have helped the people that are here today. And we'll have a Q&A at the end. But I want to introduce you guys, invite you guys to introduce yourselves. You can start with Vava.
Hi, thanks Louisa for putting this together, and I'm honored to be on this webinar panel with the rest of the lovely, amazing, strong women here. I'll be very brief. Coffee lover, coffee enthusiast, and champion for all things women, and running Vava Coffee as an exporter and producer, and Gente del Futuro, which targets youth, in particular women in origin or producing countries, where we introduce them to coffee beyond the field, coffee beyond farms, so that they can know that there's more opportunities that come with coffee aside from the agricultural aspects of it. Q grader as well, and served on the SEA board for 2 years, and a bunch of other things that you guys can look on in LinkedIn. And excited to jump into this conversation today. Thanks.
Thank you, Vava. And we have Giselle with a photo that I stole from your Instagram, I think. Sorry.
That's okay. Hi, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Giselle Barrera Carillas. I work with Grants for Empowerment. We provide training programs mostly focused in business to women coffee farmers in Central America. I am based in El Salvador, which is my home country. I've been working in coffee for the past 6 years before coming from the private sector, and I'm super excited to be here to talk with these amazing women doing great coffee work. And yeah, welcome, and thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Kimberly.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Eason. I am the founder and the CEO of Equal Origins. We formerly the Partnership of for Gender Equity. It's my 30th year in coffee. Hard to believe. It's been an exciting journey filled with all kinds of adventures and the opportunity to meet amazing people around the globe. And I'm also thrilled to be here with all of you today. Thanks so much for joining. I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation and incredibly timely. So thanks so much to Algrano for including me and for putting this together. Look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Thank you, Kimberly. And Kimberly was a later addition and asked us to participate, which was like very welcomed. It was amazing to see like that you were interested in joining as well. So thank you for
Of course, an important conversation.
Hi everyone, my name is Young-Hik Tark. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of feminist nonprofit Coping Voyage. We are based in Costa Rica, and that's where we were born about 6 years ago as well. And currently calling in from Mexico as we are working. We're starting our partnership with a local organization here. Pin Voyage provides training support to smallholder women coffee producers as well as market access, so they're able to kind of own a lot more in the supply chain, and that's what we've been doing for the past 6 years. So super honored because I've read and been following a lot of the work that these incredible women are doing, and that they've been like inspiring figures to me in coffee. Super grateful to be on the same panel with them to share a little bit about what we are doing as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Luisa, for inviting us.
No worries. So when I was putting like a little support presentation together, I came up with this data points from the coffee guide that come from the ICO from 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And we're going through it just before we started. And so 70% of total like field work being done by women in the coffee supply chain is, I think, something that's widely known. And then we were talking about this up to 30%. Of farms that are being operated by women. And then Vava and Kimberly, like, I don't think that information is correct. I think, where did that come from? What does it mean to be operated by women? And then one of the things I think we were talking about is how there's not a lot of data out there, is there?
Right.
And I think we need to get a lot more information. I think, Kimberly, I think you have a lot more information when it comes to this as well. You have a few like data points. They're very general from the industry. They're not necessarily so specific just because there isn't a lot of research. And I think this is one of the call to actions that you had in mind today as well.
Yeah, I think to kick off is just really to underscore that no coffee is produced without women. We talk a lot in the industry about a focus on women's coffee, and in reality, no coffee is produced without the hands of women touching some time, some place, and often it's a significant role that women play. And so if we look at the investment that's being made in coffee sustainability programs, in direct trade programs, certification programs, it really is a tiny drop in the bucket for what needs to be happening in order to really kind of bring more balance into the sector. The sector in many ways has been built on gender bias. Many programs that exist from sustainability efforts to certification efforts, so much of it has been built in a gender bias built in. So now is our opportunity. I think it's a really exciting time. The spotlight globally is being shined more on the importance of women's roles, women's empowerment, and that we have a significant opportunity in the coffee sector to really help drive that change. I mean, what industry in the world touches lives, touches people in the farthest remote corners of the world, like coffee, connecting people in coffee shops and really being able to generate new awareness on the inequality that is endemic across the globe, and specifically in coffee.
I don't know if you have seen it as well. Like I was really like trying to dig up for some data in like where women are involved in the supply chain. So I know like the majority of women will be involved in labor, very little, like a very small percentage in trade, in finance, in even like exporting from within producing countries or importing. Do you know anything about entrepreneurs in the like female entrepreneurs in coffee, Vava, as well? Because that's where you're in, that's what you do, and you often say that if you like you're an outlier, that a bit like a fish out of water. There's not a lot of people like you around.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's a huge gap when it comes to, case in point, in Africa and in Kenya, where when I started my business trying to set up an export business, I mean, the looks were there like, is she really gonna make it? Is she serious? Like, why can't she just go get an apprenticeship first and figure out how the business runs? And nobody, like, even till today, I feel awkward within, my own country, because I'm an outlier and there's very few of us. And when I first got my export license, nobody thought I was going to make it. Like it's and certainly that it's a high risk business, and of course the way it's set up, it's not set up for a small business to survive. That's not the way this trade business is set up. It's set up for the multinationals to thrive and for the smaller businesses to struggle. And so you have to be either really satisfied with your small piece of pie and know how to really differentiate yourself in how you tell your story and who you're working with in terms of producers. And that's a Kenyan, I would say, case, but I've also seen sometimes the same is the case in Latin America, where I've observed, the struggle for women who are trying to actually be exporters or even ship or market their own coffee. I remember having a conversation with a Latin American lady, and she was like, for her emails, she has to change her last name so that she's not gender identified in a sense, so that they don't know whether she's male or female, and they respect her emails more. And for me, I think after discovering like how few of us there are that go beyond the farm, that try and become traders, that try and even become Q graders and whatever from the African perspective, because there's still very few of us that are high level professionals in that regard beyond being a producer. It's a lonely world, and it's in terms of like looking for support and looking for someone you can reference to say, unfortunately the reference point is a fellow maybe female roaster or importer in a consuming country who
Is she breaking for
may
everyone?
be your greatest supporter because buy your coffee. So just who really love your work, they can be the folks that really.
Vava, your audio is breaking. I think you're frozen. I think you're back now. But we lost you a little while ago.
It's still frozen for me. Okay. No,
okay. But one thing, let's wait for Vava to come back. But like one thing that I wanted to ask as well for Kimberly is, so I think like you have a good overview of the supply chain, the industry, given the amount of time that you work in it. Do you see a lot of evolution? How do you think things are moving? How do you think things are changing?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of evolution, and I think when I first started in the industry, sustainability was not a topic, and I think for maybe the past 20, I can't remember when the very first environment committee was created back in the 1996 or something like that as part of the Specialty Coffee Association. That was really when the focus started on sustainability. And we've seen a lot of investment, a lot of new efforts coming on board. And I guess the question is it enough? I mean, to me, it still seems as if we have such a long way to go. And with regards to gender equity and women's empowerment in the sector, of course, back 15, 17 years ago, I was one of the original founders of the International Women's Coffee Alliance. And so certainly that's been an important organization to really put the issue of women's empowerment on the map. And so we've seen a lot of really important women-led businesses coming on board, more women in trade rooms, of course, more women at the retail and barista level. And I think one of the challenges is that even with all of the great efforts on women's empowerment, women's coffees, is that there's still this significant portion, like the vast majority of women that are working in the sector are really hidden, right? That they're the hidden workforce of coffee. And we're talking about women inside of smallholder farmer households that might be the spouse or the daughter of a man who owns the land, a man who has a position within a cooperative. And the work that they do is often, or for the most part, invisible, not acknowledged, many times not remunerated, and often happening in circumstances that are very, very difficult. And of course, there's a lot of variation around the world, but for the most part, the work of women, and as we said earlier, every single being in the sector is somehow touched and made better by the work of women, and yet they are not receiving the kind of support and opportunities equal to men. I think, that's the starting point, is how do we get the issue of gender and the opportunities for women to just at the very least be on par, to be more balanced with the opportunities for men in the sector.
Mm-hmm. And I think, but when I look at it as well, I've been looking at like a lot of new initiatives that are led by women that are very interesting and they're being quite impactful in the supply chain. I think we've been working with Nada from the Chain Collaborative in the US that does like an amazing like consulting and research and like community support work. There is Elisa from Digital Coffee Future that's talking a lot about how digitalizing the supply chain can be beneficial for the for producers, not just like beyond traceability. I think there's also it was very, very nice to see Vanusia Nogueira from Brazil becoming like the new director of the ICO. The work of the IWCA in El Salvador that I've been able to see as well is like an incredible work in terms of bringing the community together, impacting men, not just women. So I want to more like know how you guys are like filling the gap in inverted commas, like how you're being able to help female producers bridge the gap. And I think since you're already in the conversation in the flow, Kimberly, I think you can talk about the gender equity index and how you've been working on that and how the project works.
Yeah, thanks. The Equal Origins, just this week, 2 weeks ago, we officially introduced the Gender Equity Index. And the idea and the vision behind the tool is really to get the entire industry on a journey towards greater gender equity. That there's a role for every single company, there's a role for every single individual, for us as the coffee sector to get on a journey, a shared journey to reach SDG 5 and to really make a significant impact across the sector. So the Gender Equity Index is it's a tool that's actually targeted for service providers in the coffee sector. And so when we think about who is, if there's $500 million, the figure from the Coffee Barometer and the Specialty Coffee Association being invested in sustainability efforts on the ground. And a good part of that has to do with certification. But what we know is that most of those investments are not reaching and benefiting women. They're certainly not empowering women, and oftentimes they have unintentional consequences in terms of even exacerbating existing gender inequalities. So the idea behind the Gender Equity Index is actually for companies to be able to get a sort of a snapshot by taking a 67-question diagnostic around these 5 domains of gender equity for service provision, to then be able to understand where they are and then put in place a gender equity development plan for how they can improve their existing services and make sure that they reach and benefit women, and ideally over time can actually empower and transform the circumstances in which women are working.
Can anyone do that? Can, like, if I'm a coffee roaster, for example, can I go there and access the form and get a diagnosis of where I am?
Well, it's actually a question that many roasters have asked. This sounds really great. Is there a tool for us? And it's something that we would very much love to do. And the more that we understand the demand and the opportunity, that we could certainly adapt this tool to be fit for purpose for roasters. So we actually have 2 tools. This tool for service providers, and when we're talking about trading companies or not for NGO development organizations, the government-led extension services like the Colombian Coffee Federation, Ana Cafe, and others, to make sure to support them to understand how their agronomy and extension programs can be gender equitable. because for the most part, you've got, again, a program that's developed by men for men. And because of the inherent cultural bias that in most coffee producing countries exists, you have the challenge of women not being able to access in those services and opportunities. So ideally, we would have tools as well for roasters. We have a tool for the farmer organizations, which is similar. It's a more simple diagnostic tool. It's 25 questions along 5 different domains. We've applied that tool with now 60 farmer organizations around the world. And again, the idea is that once you know where you are with regards to gender equity, then you have information on which you can build an action plan. And the idea behind the work with the virtual learning journey, which you see mentioned there, we apply the diagnostic tool to the farmer organizations, work with them to build their own action plan, a relatively simple action plan, and then we invite roasters of any size to be able to invest in those action plans that where the farmer organizations have identified their core needs and opportunities to drive gender equity within their organizations and their membership, and that companies can actually play a role to help support and motivate that change on the ground.
But I think it's really cool then that the actions are being led by the organizations, not by buyers.
Yeah.
And then buyers can choose to support what they think makes more sense for them, I guess, or from their point of view. Are there already actions that are in place that people can support?
Yes, in fact, a couple weeks ago, we made an announcement that, for example, Algrano Coffee in the U.S. is now investing in the work of one of the farmer organizations in Nicaragua to build out their women's leadership program. We have others who have invested for farmer organizations to continue their participation in the program, sponsoring other farmer organizations, and so. We see the opportunity for trading partners too. So to be able to help direct us, like a number of pennies per pound into the work of these farmer organizations, because as I think everybody here knows, the voice of the roaster, it really can help drive change. We say, if quality, a certain kind of quality we're looking for, a certain kind of processing method, a certain kind of certification. If companies are talking about the importance of gender equity, then farmer and willing to support it with some investment, then farmer organizations are willing and able to make those kind of changes. So it has to be kind of through this advocacy along the supply chain and investment along the supply chain to really make change possible.
Giselle, I saw you nodding when she was talking about Nicaragua. Is that, do you have more experience on that as well?
Oh yes, I have experience with seeing a lot of women's leadership in Nicaragua, and that's been really great. And I just wanted to say, Kimberly, that I think this tool is so important because even for organizations that think they're already doing a really good job, it allows you to measure yourself. And there's also a couple of webinars that I got emails from Equal Origins that are being offered to become more familiar with the tool. I plan on attending one. So I just think it's great. It's a great tool and I look forward to learning more from it. So thank you.
Thanks, Giselle. Yeah, thanks. We are really excited about it because I think all of us see and the great work that each of the other organizations here are doing, which we'll hear more about in a minute, that if the industry is really beginning to understand where we are on the journey to greater gender equity and where they can actually invest to make a difference, then we can start to see more of that scalable, transformative change that everybody can take part in.
Great. Well, Giselle, the show is yours now. You can talk about Grounds for Empowerment. I think that's a really cool program.
Thank you. Yes, and we've been working with farmers in these 4 countries so far. We've worked with over 100 farmers. Quick stories that our very last in-person workshop was just as the world was starting to close due to the pandemic. but we've transitioned to virtual learning. Kimberly also mentioned the importance of virtual learning. We've learned along the way the challenges and also the opportunities of virtual learning, of connecting farmers with fellow entrepreneurs from other countries and mentors. And we've found the growing importance of networks, which is something similar to what we're doing here, like getting to know about other organizations, other people that are doing similar work to the work that we're doing. We'd work with IWCA, of course, in alliance in the chapters of different countries. And we've also worked with students from universities in the US and Central America. And what we've found is that there is a growing interest in learning more about coffee because as I think Kimberly also mentioned, it pulls so many different topics together. You have environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, social issues. So we've been able to connect these three pillars, these women coffee farmers that learn about business, mentors that are willing to share their subject matter expertise and connect with farmers from multiple countries, especially in these times when travel was limited. And also students that we hope will become advocates for a more sustainable industry, like what kind of coffee they will drink and ask from their suppliers in the future. So we're hoping that these networks and these three pillars together can push each from their corner to create and grow a more sustainable industry and also a more equitable one. So we have mentors, both men and women, students both men and women that join us, but our focus is on training and providing tools to women coffee farmers in the region.
So do you have like any good like success stories from female farmers that attended the webinars?
Yes, certainly. So what we found, and you can see here some of the photos from our in-person workshops prior to the pandemic and some of the virtual ones. But what we found is that in an industry where it's collaboration is not the norm, at least we've found that in our experience with farmers in Central America, it takes a couple of steps to develop trust and get to know one another. So we've found examples of growing collaboration amongst our participants even during the pandemic, sharing tools. Our message boards stay alive even after the workshops. So we saw many examples of sharing tools, sharing messages of where to find, supplies in this challenging times for supply chains. We've also been able to, and this is a photo from participants from our workshops that got to visit Emory University before the pandemic. And we've seen that these networks stay alive with farmers and students. We've seen students support their farmers, visit farms, or just go to their favorite coffee shop and ask for coffee that's been sourced by a women-owned coffee farm, which is also not the norm in most of coffee shops at origin that are starting to bubble up. So we've seen these networks grow, and that's very it's very interesting for us to see that these networks will grow even as our program is not there to support directly, that they continue to engage and support one another.
Can people join? Can people get involved in it as well? Because I know, like, I'm a mentor, but you invited me to be a mentor on storytelling, so I've been participating for a couple of years. If other people in the industry, they have some skill that they believe they can contribute to, can they join as a mentor? What's the process?
Certainly, yes. So in our website, groundsforempowerment.org, we have interest form where people can submit their information, and we reach out. We run workshops 3 times a year, depending on right now with our virtual workshops, we've been working with multiple countries. So yes, most certainly we're always looking for mentors that have experience in the industry, that have experience in different topics like marketing, financial planning, business planning. And we've found that through connecting with our participants, our farmers, which is their subject matter expertise, we're able to create like relationships that grow past our workshops, which run for 5-6 weeks at a time.
And you're talking about collaboration and the example of El Salvador, which is quite interesting. But I remember Sungi was talking about how that is one of the, I'd say, the soft skills that women bring um, as a differential to coffee. I don't know if you want to jump in there and talk a little bit about how your experience is, because I know like the experience is quite varied here. I know Vava will have something different to say, but we haven't heard about you, Sungi, yet. So
Yeah, I think a lot of what Giselle shares definitely echoes with our experience in Costa Rica as well. And I've also been part of Grounds for Empowerment's network, mentor network, and really enjoyed every interaction that I had with the producer partner. And I think that's why I can also say like it's like the sense that we get from our workshops that have also recently been virtual, especially through WhatsApp because of the internet access and so forth, have been quite similar, that people stay really collaborative and active even after our training period is over. And I think one thing that we've been noticing, I think there's so many gaps that needs to be filled, and that's why I think I really like the title, Filling the Gap, because I think that's also like where our work oftentimes comes in. A lot of the work that we do isn't necessarily, is doing anything new. And I think a lot of our work is referencing a lot of the research actually being done by Kimberly's organizations, for example, that have been like really leading the being the pioneer of like really putting the data out there when it comes to gender equity, and also referencing to Grounds for Empowerment as well as Baba's company in Kenya. So like learning from that and bringing to our partner network and asking them like, is that something that you would be interested in? They actually fill in the gap and say like, hey, these are local actors that exist and they're doing this work, and they actually identified the gap for us to fill, and that's why our organization have been quite malleable in a way, especially when it comes to like being able to provide support in different areas that includes not only training but also business grants, policy that we pass, as well as documentary project that we've been doing. But I can talk about that a little bit more later on. But I think collaboration definitely has been key, and that's something that we are also like, a lot of the small NGOs that we are talking to also echo that of like, right now, I think there's a lot, it feels a lot safer to reach out to another NGO, especially living led by women, especially if they're in this area, in the area of sustainability, to say, hey, are you interested in collaborating? And I think the reaction is a lot more open, and hearing from our mentors and advisors, it seems to be also the landscape definitely has been changing. And I wonder if it's the changing environment, but then also like, as you said, like maybe it's people being more aware of the power of collaboration when it comes to like the sustainability area. So,
yeah. And well, I know that Vava has a slightly different opinion because I spoke to her about that, and I think from her perspective, she would want there to be more collaboration. But there's one thing that from her work that I find very interesting is that she said so Vava works a lot with like representation, so like how female coffee producers would like to see themselves represented throughout the industry, and I think that there's a big issue around that, and she's been managing to shift the behavior of buyers that work with her throughout her work, and how she herself represents the producers she works from. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Vava, talk about a little bit about the sustainability projects that you work with.
No, thanks, Louisa. I don't know if you guys can hear me well, because there's like a background noise, a screeching noise, but I hope you can hear me. So, well, for me, it's been like a long road to sort of change the perception of how roasters and importers, because it's been like a dynamic of we're doing you a favor type of thing, like by buying your coffee, and we shall dictate what kind of photos we take of you, like just pose, hold the cherry, I want a wet meal, I want, like producers have really had no say in how they're depicted and the photography that's used, and how they're talked about. And that's why I've always felt it strongly ever since I got into the industry. I was like, this colonial, I mean, coffee, we cannot deny that coffee is heavily colonial in how it's structured and how we trade And even when we talk about empowering women, it's always the Western world that tells us that we're not empowered. We're like, okay, in some cases, there is a case of disempowerment. Yes, I don't deny that even in my community, there are things I'm trying to elevate for women that I work with, but not everything that we're a part of, the communities that we're a part of, not everything is negative. But every time an NGO project is started in a coffee producing region, its terms are dictated. Like even if there's like community consultation, there's certain things that you can't get away from when it comes to the report writing. Like if an organization wants to see X number of women trained, you're wondering, okay, is it just the numbers, or do we actually want long-lasting change? And do you want to leave some of the knowledge in that community by actually maybe creating a TOT system or an environment where knowledge is left in the community. I think my video stopped for a while, but I'll just keep talking.
But what do you mean by a
I hope you guys can still hear me.
What do you mean by a TOT system?
So it's a case of. Hello?
Hi, Vava, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Or should I?
Yeah,
Hi.
I can hear you. I don't think she can hear.
Okay. Sorry. I'm just gonna switch off my video for more stability in this connection.
Okay. Tsungi, I think like you can maybe jump in on that as well, because you're doing a project with Ben Voyage about allowing, like, helping the producers to film themselves. I remember that was something that you were doing as well.
Right. So we are currently leading a participatory documentary project with another NGO called Needle and Frame. And that was definitely, I think, that the challenge that we've been having and the frustration that we've been having in the way that pictures are taken and the stories are written, as well as how the ownership and agency are oftentimes kind of like removed and extracted from the coffee communities. And 5 producers in our network joined this 1 year, actually it's still ongoing, and we're releasing this film this month, where they received 5 cameras. So 5 communities received cameras. Each of them had ownership of an entire their storyboard. So they met regularly on a weekly basis with our partner organization, Needle and Frame, who then supported the producers over a period of 1 year, from all the way from writing a storyboard to deciding what footage needs to stay in the video and not, and their voice recording and all of it. And so they kind of like helped the 5 producers tell their own stories, and now it's being put together and edited. And actually, like the final copy we've already seen it, but it's not ready yet for the public. It's going to be available later this year in the summer, because we're also letting the producers decide how they want to design the premiere of the film. So initially it was like, okay, let's do something virtual, and there's a lot of discussion of like, we want to do something in person in Costa Rica. So we are now trying to pick a place, date, what's an ideal place for 5 producers to all meet in the center, and it's been really refreshing and eye-opening for all of us, I think, especially because for me, who have worked in coffee for 6 years, I think there's a type of coffee stories that's being told over and over again. And I think we are also culprit of it, right? Like we are, I think, somewhat, because we started being involved in coffee, and there was like a format that existed, and we were trying to challenge it. But I think somewhat it was being influenced by how the industry was accepting and telling their stories. And then, completely like removing us from the whole storyboard phase and the whole project phase, our producers showed us what is it that they wanted to tell. And I think it's kind of really eye-opening in a way that we hear stories about this girl in yellow dress, and completely different from like, I think how we would have, pictured her. Doña Margot, for instance, she just like starts to like, yeah, picture this girl in yellow dress, and I didn't know how to read, and just like goes on to tell about her coffee story that doesn't necessarily have any coffee until like later on, and about Tati and her dad and her relationship with her dad, and it's just really, 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 I think, eye-opening, and something that we want to continue doing. And I also learn, I think, also more from Baba and her work. And yeah, that's a little bit about the project that we've been leading. But yeah, it will be available later in the year, and you can actually like get notification by following strongerthancoffee.org.
Okay, Vava, I think, so Vava says she joined from her phone to see if it works better now with the connection. Should we try?
Yeah, let's try.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. I'm not sure where I left off. Maybe I was talking to myself. But just to like, okay, for me, I told myself, like, after a couple of years in this industry, I was like, okay, I can't be comfortable in the same rhetoric, or like, even when I, as a woman, I'm looked at so strangely by my colleagues every time I'm at a coffee show and whatever, and I'm like, you still get weird questions as to how can you be a producer and you're so eloquent? How can you be working with farmers and you're so well dressed? And like, just weird things that you're told by people who are just ignorant. So I felt that I had to use my voice to speak to giving power back to producers, such that people know that producers are not lowly people that you're doing a favor for or towards when you're purchasing coffee. These are people that want to be perceived as business people, people who are capable of a negotiation. Look at all the amount of work that goes into producing a coffee cherry that scores even 70 points. Or even, before we even get to specialty, it's like a labor of love, because if farmers really did not care, they'd chop off all their coffee and, but this seems to be something that keeps them going back to the farm. And, but also, of course, there's a double burden on women in coffee because of, if you come from Africa, the culture and what women are supposed to do, say, or look. And then you go to the Western world, where, of course, there's another struggle if you're a woman that's trying to achieve, be it the level that you think you're worthy, be it a board position, be it a trader that's trying to bring yourself into a room full of men and in full of multinationals, and you're from that country. So for me, it was always that whole, I was like, why am I fighting every time? Why do I feel like I'm trying to prove myself every time I'm in a room and people, you say something and then there's doubts about how can you really know this much about coffee, or, the country and the lay of the land. And I'm like, one, because I grew up there and like, I've kind of, been working my way around to study this. So, but I realized there's so many women that don't have a voice or don't have the platform that I've had the privilege of having. So I take all those things that I hear every time I'm in the field and I try and bring them in all the work that we do, be it Coffee Milk Blood, be it Gente del Futuro, be it Vava Coffee. When I bring collectives of women's coffee and we're selling them, through Algrano, it's because I know that life has dealt me perhaps a better chance than any of the other women that I've come across that look up to me, and some that may be fighting me as well. And I'm like, we really need to change how we also talk about ourselves as women and how we portray ourselves. So that sort of brought itself into all of this. I do believe in the power of collaboration, for sure, but I think when you're in a room and you're in disagreement with someone, and you need to stand up for yourself and you need to speak up based on your belief system. And that does not make you an aggressive individual, because oftentimes people think that when you're trying to make a point and you're trying to speak for yourself and how you want to be seen, and how you want your story told, some, the negative connotations are always, you're aggressive, you're demanding, you're difficult, that kind of thing. And because I think oftentimes the industry has also had it very easy when it comes to this thing, like especially when producers are involved, is they dictate, we follow, because also we don't consume these coffees that we're producing. We don't consume enough of them. And all the terms and conditions that we also adhere to in this industry are set by the Western world. So I've, you know, for the longest time, I've felt that it's good that there's strong women around the world. And if some of those strong women are in these producing countries, we need to step up our game as well and put our own terms and conditions on certain things, be it storytelling, be it what we want in community projects, what kind of help we want, because not all help is good. Some of the help that sometimes you receive can put you in chains for the rest of your life, and you're writing reports and paying debts that you don't want to pay. And I can tell you lessons learned as an entrepreneur, not all donations are great, not all grants are great. So just, you know, there's the need for conversations between, like when we talk about empowering communities, what is the definition of this empowerment, and what are the long-term effects of this empowerment? So yeah.
You know, I think that's why when you see like the projects that are really making a difference are the projects that allow producers to empower themselves and decide themselves where they want to invest money. So like Grounds for Empowerment has the seeds grant where people can decide what they want to do. Being Voyage has something similar. Kimberly was talking about that as well. And I'm seeing these pop up more and more, even from the roaster side. I know a female roaster in the UK. Probably everyone knows of Ghost for Grinds, that they have that cheek to cheek program in which they do. It's kind of like the way of paying producers for the stories that they share, for being able to use their name on the packaging. So they just like £1 of the retail money of coffee that paid on the retail coffee goes back to the producer, and the producer can do whatever they want with it. There's no accountability. There's no expectation. You don't have to invest if you don't want. If you want to spend it on whatever, you can do it. It's like it's your money. But like I'm seeing more of that, and I think that's a narrative that we should continue to multiply. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's also something that you do with Gente del Futuro, however. And I don't know if you want to explain to people a little bit more about it, how they could get involved, because I know it's quite collaborative as well, and what you've been trying to do with it, what you've been trying to achieve.
Yes, and Gente del Futuro was born out of an idea from my partner, who's Colombian and works in Tanzania as well. So he developed a curriculum while in Colombia focused on young people in coffee growing regions, where we've got about 6 to 7 sort of a coursework that breaks down coffee from seed, from the nursery literally up to commercialization of coffee when it ends up in your cup of, or in a coffee shop or at home. And the idea for this was because we do have a huge problem in growing regions, that young people are really not interested in getting into coffee. So you find idle farms, or you find in some of these regions, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of like young people looking for jobs are just going to urban areas to look for employment. It's a huge problem in a lot of producing countries. So he tested the program out by doing producer camps in Colombia, Medellin, and then decided to replicate it in Tanzania. So we did our first test run 2 years ago, just before COVID. That's a photo of some of the first group, the cohort in Tanzania. So we took 6 women from Kenya, 6 women from Tanzania, sponsored them to take part in the training. So the training took part on the coffee farms in Tanzania. And then we used the Tanzania coffee landscape, exposing them to the other aspects of coffee. So they lived on a farm, went through the whole processing, everything, and then moved that to now a roastery. So we used the Tanzania Coffee Board roastery room. We used one roaster that we worked with donated a coffee machine at that time. So and being a skilled barista himself, of course, he did the training, he volunteered, came from Australia, did the training with us. So you can see how, you know, there's like several pieces that come together. There's roasters getting involved from different parts of the world, coming to a producing country and giving their knowledge. Because I felt, you know, a lot of roasters, importers reach out to us asking, what else can we do? And I was like, hey, you know, if you can't give cash, if you can't give equipment, why don't you give us some of your time? Come, we'll give you accommodation, we'll give you meals. You just have to spend a week, 2 weeks, depending on how long the course we want you to teach is. Or you can pick and choose where you feel your expertise feels fit, and they come spend some time with us, pass on their knowledge. And some of the students you see, or the ladies you see, actually are qualified SEA sensory and SEA like foundation courses. So the idea, because we know we can't get away from the CSP or like what SEA has offered, because it is a world recognized accreditation sort of program that the SEA offers. We are combining our GDF curriculum with the CSP that SEA offers. What you're seeing on your screens right now is like how we follow up on graduates from the program to see their success stories, like how many of them stayed in the coffee industry, how many got employed, how many got internships, how many dropped out and had no interest. So that's the kind of data we've been collecting over time to see where do the ladies that we train go. However, the program is not limited to women alone. I've been asked that question by a lot of young men who feel who felt left out when we first did the first cohort. And I was like, no, we are an all-inclusive program. However, of course, in the first cohort, our sponsorships only went to women. We do have collaborators that are men, and we are, like, for the program we're kicking off on May 31st, we're incorporating, it's going to be 50-50 girls, women and men on the island of Lamu, because some of the stuff has happened very serendipitously, because when COVID happened, we could not continue with a lot of what we had planned. So a lot of things started making.
Can I just interrupt you quickly? Because what do you consider like very good results, moderate results? Because you see, like here it says, like, unless people have jobs or they start their own businesses, they don't have very good results. So what is it that you classify as like this very success? Or
to me, very good results if someone can create a career from this and also get a job. So if a graduate gets an internship, gets a job, or gets a placement, and they retain the interest in the coffee industry, that is a very good result. It's not even like a good, that's a very good. Like if we're able to invest in a student, a trainee, and they continue their career and they get from foundation to intermediate to professional level, and they continue working. So we've changed a few things in the project this year, whereby we're opening a mini cafe on the island so that we are also able to absorb the trainees into employment like immediately. So, and lucky enough for us, we've got a great ASD. I looked for this ASD for 2 years. He didn't know, but the universe sent him to us, the slide, because I've been looking for an ASD who can spend a year with us. He hasn't agreed to a year yet, but he's agreed to at least 2 months with us. We shall see how it goes. But 2 months for me is enough for me to like work with a professional to also like help us retain most of the knowledge in country. We do have a shortage of like trained ASDs on the continent. I know some of you know this, but so for me to have an in-house ASD, someone who's also passionate about giving back to community and learning about the culture, but also just more importantly, dedicating his time to actually educate. For me, that this was like the universe like really knew what it was doing this year for us. So we kick off, I would say the next cohort on May 31st in Lamu, and we're starting small, and we're lucky enough to have already gotten some wonderful contributions from roasters that we work with. And we're looking for all kinds of support. We've managed to talk to also Martin Shabaya, who's the WBC finalist for Kenya, who's going to be coming in and out to assist when he can. Like, he's going to be showing up because his schedule is it's not fully confirmed. So he'll be, given he's based in Kenya, he'll be coming to help out. We've got a couple of other volunteers lined up. And this is also so that roasters can get an opportunity to understand Kenya better from a Kenyan standpoint, but also just in a community that is really needing these skills. And we're happy to take any kind of assistance, help. It can come in any form, in kind, equipment, monetary, time and effort. And I truly believe that this is a way to really elevate young people. I often, like I was telling you yesterday, my questions are always about what are we really leaving for the next generation, if not skills, knowledge, and a beautiful world that they can live in. Because, you know, those are some of the things that really, you know, we should be concerned about, is just what do we leave for the young people behind us. And yeah, so I feel that this is a phenomenal project that people should be involved in.
Perfect. Bava, I'll have to interrupt you there. Just, I'm a bit aware of time. I know that we're on time pretty much. But I really want to give Sungi as well the opportunity to present a little bit more about Being Voyage, and just talk about a little bit about their achievements as well. And I know Sungi has to leave soon.
Right, yeah.
We can talk a little bit about Being Voyage. Bava, you can also share on the chats how people can join, if there is a link that they can go to, they can get involved in Gente del Futuro. That would be great. And Sungi, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, everyone. And I think I really enjoyed listening to everyone's experience. It's been a great morning hour here. So Being Voyage, as I was mentioning earlier briefly, is a feminist nonprofit that collaborates with smallholder women coffee producers. And I think we like to say our statement as short as possible, but I think oftentimes it's really hard to summarize it even in one sentence, because I think what we do and what we've been doing have been literally filling in the gap that larger entities oftentimes miss out. And that has been the participants who've been kind of like left out from this, I guess, like the landscape of work and so forth, have been oftentimes women, smallholder women coffee producers, and that's been our target audience. And we, my co-founder Abhinav and I have been very just lucky to come upon the coffee industry the way it is 6 years ago, that led us to start the organization. But I think from the very beginning, we're very clear that we have to have an exit strategy. We didn't necessarily want it to be about us, nor did it want it to actually, did we want to actually continue being involved, because we thought that there are a lot more talents and people who are way more capable of leading the organization in the coffee industry than we are. And that's also the reason. And I think it's, and kind of like reflecting on like why, I guess how the nonprofit world is structured, and it's quite unfortunate that we still need to be involved to be able to like fundraise because of like our educational background and so forth, that allows us to be able to like reach a little bit more funder network. But I think eventually we won't necessarily be involved in the work that we do in Being Voyage, and that's been quite clear to everyone from the starting. And that meant that we really wanted to kind of like leverage the local network that exists. So in Costa Rica, a lot of the work that we do is in collaboration with existing organizations. So ICAFE, CATIE are two of like our biggest partners. And what we do is, using their knowledge material and funneling that towards group that we identify as the most vulnerable. And Maria Jose, one of my teammates, has worked on what we call the vulnerability metrics, where she identifies groups of producers who are maybe in communities where there's no co-op nearby, and they're not being able to kind of like participate in any of the workshops, or they are oftentimes they're also non-Indigenous people in Indigenous communities, because policies in governmental policies have only worked, targeted Indigenous communities, only kind of like looking at the population, but there are so many other people that are living there and are going through a certain experience and not necessarily being able to reach out to any other entity. So that's where Open Voyage has been kind of like, funneling our resources. And also individual, smallholder individual women farmers who haven't necessarily found their connection with any local entities, and they're being kind of like left out from like, I guess, like the nationwide conversation. So we've been kind of like forming informal groups with all of them so that they feel like there is like one place where they can go to seek support. And oftentimes what we do is actually connecting them to the local organization and saying, hey, these are some of the organizations that are doing great work. Maybe you'll be able to kind of like get support from them. And apart from that, we've also led projects that included training on climate change and adaptation in partnership with ICAFE and CATIE. So we did WhatsApp-based training to be able to meet where the producers are. So a lot of the times producers have told us Zoom isn't necessarily an option for them, but WhatsApp is. So then we're like, okay, what are ways that we can actually engage them on WhatsApp? So we started working with local youth and trained them as care facilitators, and they were hosting weekly workshops with over 200 producers a year. So they were getting like a weekly content that has been digested by our team. The scientific research, there's so much research being done in coffee, and a lot of them actually are remaining, they remain in like a very technical term. So our team spend time to actually turn them into infographics and turn them into simpler languages, and then sending them over WhatsApp and recording videos and voice notes to be able to kind of make that content a lot more accessible and approachable and also free. So that's what we've been doing in terms of climate change and adaptation, but we've also done training in the past with Root Capital and financial literacy in person, and recently with Western Union more on virtual space because they're based and then quite active in Costa Rica, and also have currently one project that I'm leading and trying to make it a little bit more accessible is a calculator that we've been getting data from Grants for Empowerment, specialty coffee transaction guide, and we've been like using that as part of our financial literacy workshop to share the PDFs. And producers once reached out to us and said like, I don't necessarily know, there's just too much data for me personally, so then can you help me break it down in an Excel form? So then that's kind of like how the project started, but it's still kind of an ongoing one that I'm hoping to kind of work a little bit more on as our time becomes available. And the photo that you're seeing right now is from food security and income diversification workshop that we ran earlier. So we finished it in February this year, and we were running it since last year in August, because after COVID, we've identified, or a lot of producers actually reached out saying their contracts were canceled and they didn't necessarily have food immediately. So the first thing that we could do is fundraisers on our birthdays to raise a little bit of funding to provide immediate support. But as we all know, it's a longer term problem, right? Like food security issue isn't necessarily like a short-term issue. And we collaborate with ICAFE to see what is it that we could do, and we provided workshop on diversification projects so that they're not having to depend heavily on coffee to be able to have income. And that also had a micro grants component where we gave out about $15,000 to 47 businesses. So we call them businesses, they're coffee farming families, to start a project either as a beekeeper or hen keeping and home gardening as part, along with their coffee businesses, to be able to kind of have alternative income sources. And the first photo that you're seeing here is actually a workshop led by Jose, one of our care facilitator, young local youth that led workshops on positive masculinity. So every year we run a series of gender focused workshop. So oftentimes, just giving an example from last year, three of these workshops were run by a partner called Irene, and she created a space for women to kind of come together and share their experiences, and also talk about the concepts, theories and things that producers may not necessarily be familiar with, but that's something that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And then at the end, we had one workshop with Jose, who actually studied gender in his university degree, lead workshop on positive masculinity. So engaging men and women, and here it's specifically youth in the communities, to actually talk about what does it mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be a man. Obviously, it's like self-identifying women and men, and we acknowledge that there is a lot, like it's a spectrum. But here in these communities, sorry, I will slow down, but I think, I have to leave in 5 minutes. I was like rushing, apologies. But yeah, so we've been leading workshops with Jose to be able to kind of identify and host these conversations in a way that can be productive for everyone, not only for women. So I think oftentimes we might come across as and I think we do say out loud that we work specifically with women, but I think we have to also admit that it's just, there are a lot more people, and working with women means working with men as well, to be able to like engage them in conversations about gender. What do they have to do to create space for women to thrive? And an anecdote that I was sharing with Luisa yesterday was that we are also noticing a lot of this conversations changing for the new generation. So the producers that join our network don't have to be landowners themselves, because we know that land ownership, albeit it's legal in Costa Rica for women, it's oftentimes challenged, right? Like quite a lot of producers might inherit land from their parents, but as soon as they get married, they just merge it with their husbands, and then start exporting in the husband's name. And these women oftentimes are then ignored from the eyes of the policies, governmental support, and so forth. So one comment that we heard from one of the facilitators, Facundo, a man, said, yeah, my mom actually inherited her land, but we've actually never exported our coffee in her name ever in our history, although we've been running micromill for years, until she joined Bean Voyage, and now she's actually being able to see a little bit more of that actually being recognized in her name. So there are, I think, areas that we don't necessarily shout about, but we know that's happening and people are talking about. And yeah, so I think that's one, like some of the projects that we are running, as well as I think I was mentioning earlier about the documentary project, and one project that we ran with youth that we really want to come back to once COVID is over, is called Care Fellowship, which was like a business incubator program for local youth, and a lot of good I think outcome came out of it, because one business that received funding from Bean Voyage is run by Laura and Vivi, and it's a tour agency, and we are partnering with them now to host all of our university visits program. So there is like a funnel of income directly going to them, and they're actually growing their business at a much faster scale than we ever could ourselves, So constantly kind of like building this network. And the most, I think, just talking about like what I think Bean Voyage has done most recently is also passing the gender policy with the cafe. So that's in planning right now. So they approved it. They approved the gender policy in February, if I'm not wrong, and the research was actually done last year for the whole year. And then one of the first steps that we'll be doing in partnership with ICAFE is actually gender sensitivity training for ICAFE staff. So a lot of the work that they do can be a little bit more, or a lot more gender inclusive and sensitive, so that eventually Bean Voyage's work won't be necessary to, necessarily geared towards women in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where we want to get, is like that we don't have to have these conversations all the time, I guess. But Sungi, just before you go, can you tell people again, like I'll ask the same question I asked Giselle and Vava and Kimberly, if people want to get involved, if they want to support, what can they do?
Oh yeah, you can visit us on beanvoyage.org. That's, I think, where a lot of our projects and updates are also being made, and there are call to actions for each of the projects that we do. But we're also quite active on Facebook, and we try to be as active on LinkedIn and Medium. So you can definitely follow us on our website.
Okay, perfect.
And socials.
Thank you very much. Because we're a bit on our time, we're a bit like beyond what we initially had imagined. I'm gonna say, like, if you guys want to ask questions, you can find Kimberly, Sungi, Giselle, and Vava. Everyone is on Instagram. Like Equal Origins has their handle. If you guys can just share your handles, I think that's on the chat. I think that's a good way for people to get in touch if they want to know more. But I also want to invite you to just, if you want to share something that you didn't have the opportunity to in the conversation, if you want to like just wrap up or like final considerations as well, I think that'll be a very nice way to close. Do I have to point your fingers?
I know. One thing that I just wanted to say very quickly is that, like, we run out of time, right? There are so many success stories that I love hearing about, like from Vava and Kimberly and Sungi and all these things, that even though we are fairly connected to one another, like I follow all of you on your social media and your projects, there are all these things that are bubbling up that we don't always know about. So just the importance of these spaces, we hear from our farmer participants as well, like to see one another, like to see other women being successful and leading their farms and businesses, and how inspiring and helpful it is, even to know who to reach out to. Like, for instance, like learning more about Kimberly's work and Baba and Sunky, and just knowing who to ask or reach out for specific data points or initiatives, I think is super helpful. So hopefully there are more spaces like this in the future to continue growing the conversation.
Thanks, Giselle. I think hearing from all of you today and knowing about the many opportunities that exist for collaboration and for investment, that it really is the time is right and ripe for really making a transformative shift in the coffee sector, whereby we're elevating women's voices, elevating the visibility, opening up opportunities for all women along the supply chain to be seen, to have a seat at the table, to have their voices heard. And as each of you has said, the importance and the role of men is critical too. So, you know, if being a feminist organization doesn't mean that it's only women, we really do need and invite men to participate and to support. And we know many men that are, and that is really significant to have the voices of men also in this kind of a conversation. And I think if we look at how we collaborate in a way that can be measurable, so again, kind of highlighting the opportunity of the Gender Equity Index, and that works both for farmer organizations and for extension and advisory services providers. And I'd like to follow up with you, Sanghi, about the work at eCafe in Costa Rica, because obviously the government-led extension programs have to become gender equitable in everything that they do. It's not only about women's projects, women's focused initiatives, but it is how do we embed gender equity in everything that happens across the sector, and policies are really key to making that happen at national levels. And so again, the more that we can advocate for these kinds of policy shifts, so that again, the role and the actions are taken at origin by the people who know what's important and how to create those changes, I think that really helps to drive change. And it's an exciting time. So thanks to Algrano, and it's been great to be with all of you. And thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. I don't know, Sungi and Vava, if you guys want to say a few words just before we wrap up.
I'll be very quick. Just data is important. That's a thing that this whole industry knows. We all need to invest in data, and updated data. Thank you, Algrano, for providing a really good platform for this conversation to happen. And there's too much to say, so I'll keep it to that. And
research, basically. Okay, we need research.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Thank you so much. Yeah, not also taking up too much time. Really grateful for the space and everything that I got to learn as well, for being part of the panel and everyone's work. Yeah, I know there's a lot more also being done in coffee. Maybe that there's like, more spaces like this. Thank you so much for creating this, and thank you so much for doing all that you're doing, and for sharing it.
Thank you, guys.
To everyone.
And as I said, I'll make the recording available for everyone in the next week, and also like I'll list all the organizations and their initiatives in case people want to just recap what they can do and what they can participate as well. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.